Would you like to say a word or should I start?
It's up to you.
Well, I'm going to get started here, and I have three stories to read. The first one that I'm going to read was really, I wrote it as a preface to a collection of stories that I had first jotted down. And this was the preface. And then the moment I started writing more and more, something came into my mind that I felt that I was writing conversations, I can turn them into stories. And then that's was the turning point for me. So I went back to each one of my conversations and turned them into stories. I can't describe to you what they are, but you can hear it. That's what I consider what a story is. So this one I entitled it Embracing Loss, Finding Meaning in Memories. So here I begin. Shireen left us on March 31st, 2022, sooner than any of us was ready to say goodbye. When she was first diagnosed with pneumonia and admitted to the hospital, we were certain she would be back home in a few days. Every day we were told that she would be discharged once her oxygen levels improved. But on 11th day, everything changed. The doctor gently told us that further treatment wouldn't help. Hospice care was the only option. Our daughters, Renuka and Ranjana, stood beside her as Renuka explained the situation. Shireen asked for guidance. In those short moments of silence, she understood. No words were needed. Shireen was deeply sad, but her quiet understanding, she accepted the inevitable. I, however, was lost. I held her hand, unwilling to let go, unable to say all the things that mattered. 24 hours later, she was gone, and suddenly so my sense of direction. This sudden rupture from the life I once knew left me with a sense of emptiness I could not overcome. Friends and family called, sent flowers, condolence cards, and fruit basket, yet nothing could fill the void I felt. With Renuka, Ranjana, and Wally by my side, we said a final goodbye to Shireen at Dignity Memorial Funeral Home. Her ashes rest in an urn on my dresser, a silent reminder that one day mine will join her, and like entangled particles, we might share the same fate once more. In the days that followed, I found myself rereading the messages left on the funeral home website, searching for her in their words. I turned to YouTube videos about grief and to books that promised comfort, but nothing eased the silence that surrounded me. Then on April 29th, 2022, something remarkable happened. A Zoom gathering brought together more than 300 people from across the United States and India to celebrate Shireen's life. As they spoke, the memory of her warmth and kindness surrounded me, and for a fleeting moment, she was with me again. One story stayed with me. In 1999, PhD student Senthil Kumar and two classmates from Hyderabad Business School visited Bentley University for a year. Shireen and I welcomed them into our home, regularly inviting them for dinner and sharing our lives with them. One evening, Senthil received the news that his wife had given birth to their first child. His joy was overshadowed by the pain of missing his son's first cries and his wife's joyful face. Those special moments were lost and could never be reclaimed. Shireen noticed something the rest of us missed. She found a long tube that looked like a shuttlecock holder and had an idea. Let's fill it up with things from today, she said. Newspaper stories, pictures, small mementos, coins, and a list of popular songs. When your son turns 25, he can open it and see what the world was like on the day he was born. For 3 days, they worked on it together. The loneliness that had weighed on Central lifted, replaced by a quiet focus. My son is 23 now, he shared on Zoom. In 2 years, we'll finally open the tube together. As I listened to his story, I couldn't help but reflect on the passage of time and the way we hold on to memories. The same desire to preserve the past and honor loved ones was what brought us together. I was the last person to speak to Shireen at Shireen's celebration of life ceremony. I began by sharing something Shireen often told me, that our two daughters are like Martha and Mary from the New Testament. But after hearing Central's story, I realized that Shireen embedded both. Like Mary, she could read silence and respond in her own way. At the same time, like Martha, she was warm and efficient host, making everything feel welcome. Whether through the way she prepared a home for guests or infused each gathering with meaning, she had a way of making each moment special. Weeks later, my granddaughter Jessica came from school and found me sitting alone at the kitchen table, lost in thought. Without a word, she sat beside me. For 5 long minutes, we cried together. When she finally spoke, her words shattered something inside me. When you and Nani went to Chapel Hill to visit Renuka and her family, I always missed you both, she whispered, but I knew you would come back. Her voice trembled and her words landed like a weight on my heart. This time, she's not coming back. Her words made me realize that my grief was not mine alone. Jessica had lost her nanny. My daughters had lost their mother. We were all mourning in our own way. I've been drowning in sorrow, but Jessica reminded me that I was not alone. At my annual checkup, my cardiologist, Dr. John Stephenson, noticed the weight I carried. Focus on the things she loved and valued, he advised. At that time, I didn't fully grasp the words, but in July 2022, I came to understand that our conversations were the thread weaving our lives together, nurturing bonds and allowing us to grow. Sitting at my computer, I found myself lost in memory, retracing the cities that shaped us. Faizabad, New Delhi, Boston, Atlanta, Ahmedabad, and Chandler. Each name had a story, a piece of life we built together. During the Zoom ceremony, our granddaughter Emmy had described Nani as an explorer, fearless and eager in any situation. Later, as we searched for the right words to engrave on the bench in Duke Forest to honor Shri, Emmy suggested Nani was a quiet force who lit up every room she entered. These stories are my memories of our interaction and conversation. As I relived them, her zest for life unfolded in my mind, guiding me in her absence. In remembering her, I found solace, a reassurance that her presence endures beyond words. And I know that as long as we remember her, her light will never fail. Apologize, this one is a bit emotional for me, but the rest of them go along properly. So this was the first story that I wrote, and now I've titled it Discovering Shireen, Was It Fate? In April 1965, after 4 years of study, I completed my PhD. It was a milestone, though I hadn't grasped its significance. But Boston University had. They offered me a 3-year teaching contract and sponsored my US immigration visa application. That summer, my visa was approved, but there was a catch. I was placed on a waiting list number 428. With India's immigration quota capped at 100 visas per year, I was facing a 4-year wait. There was another condition. Being on the list required me to register for US military service. Fortunately, I was granted a deferment, but my residency status was precarious. Leaving the US before receiving my green card would mean forfeiting my place in the immigration process. Then in July 1965, everything changed. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 reallocated unused visas from Western Europe. And to my surprise, my green card arrived years ahead of schedule. Suddenly, I was free to travel. For the first time, I considered visiting home. International travel in the 1960s was expensive and complicated, and the thought of a trip to India required careful planning. In passing, I mentioned to my parents, if the opportunity arose, I might consider marriage during my visit. It was an offhand remark, one I didn't think twice about. But my parents took it seriously. In November 1965, everything changed again. With a letter from my mother, they had already found something. Her name was Shireen Patrick. She was bright, accomplished. She has recently earned her MSc in zoology from Lucknow University and was teaching at Isabella Thorburn College. Her parents were both doctors. Her father ran the Faridabad Leprosy Hospital, while her mother oversaw women and children care. Enclosed with the letter was a photograph of her. I looked at it with mild curiosity, unaware that this moment, as small, so unremarkable, would change my life. One question lingered. How had my parents, living 500 miles away from Shireen's home, even learned about it? The answer came in my father's next letter. A Methodist pastor from Faridabad had visited his school in Delhi. During the conversation, my possible marriage had come up. The pastor spoke highly of the Patrick's family and their daughter. He provided my father with the contact information, and soon my father wrote to Dr. Patrick, expressing interest. During the Diwali holidays, my parents traveled to Faridabad to meet them. When they returned, they had made up their mind. She was the one. From thousands of miles away in Boston, I struggled to process what was happening. Though I had grown up in India, I had never witnessed an arranged marriage unfold firsthand. The idea that my future was being decided without me felt odd and surreal. I carried on with my routine at Boston University, detached from the process. Then in December, another letter arrived from my father. This time the tone was different. You should start writing to her. I hesitated. What possibly can I say to someone I have never met? Weeks passed. Then one evening in January 1966, I pulled out a blue aeroplane, hesitated for a long moment, then began. Dear Shireen, with little knowledge of her personality or interest, I filled the page with mundane details. The layout of my bedroom, my apartment, my daily trolley ride to Boston University, and even an observation that US postage had remained 4 cents for 4 years. I sealed the letter and sent it, uncertain of what, if anything, would come of it. A month later, in February 1966, her reply arrived. She followed my lead. She described the view from a veranda overlooking the hospital fields. It was simple, ordinary, but in that moment, something shifted. A quiet connection formed, a thread tying two distant lives. The same month, my brother Ron visited me in Boston. He asked about Shireen. I shrugged. It's just part of the process, I told him. Ron was unimpressed. Marriage isn't a process, it is a choice. You have to take it seriously. His words lingered with me. That evening, I picked up Shireen's photograph again, but this time I saw her differently. The way her sari pleats fell in perfect pleats, the way the hem rested so precariously all around, her deep, expressive eyes holding stories I didn't yet know. Even the upright slant of her handwriting, I sensed quiet confidence. For the first time, I felt drawn to her. That night, I wrote again, but this time it was different. I poured something real onto the page. I enclosed the Polaroid photo that Ron had taken of me that afternoon. It was a small gesture, but it meant something. The letter marked the beginning of a lifetime of conversation between us. In June 1966, at a professional conference at Cambridge, Massachusetts, I met two Indian women pursuing PhD in Harvard. During a conversation, I mentioned my upcoming trip to India and my arranged marriage. The reaction stunned me. You're marrying a woman you barely know? One asked, incredulous. To them, it was absurd. I defended. I argued that shared culture, language, and values form the foundation of a strong marriage. What, what could be more natural, I said, than building a life with someone who understands your world? But their response stopped me cold. Don't you see? You are not choosing compatibly. You are reinforcing the very the caste division that keep us apart. That night, their words played over and over in my mind. I realized something else had already taken root. Our letters had fostered something within me, a quiet understanding, a familiarity, a warmth. For the first time, I wondered, perhaps this is just not an arrangement. Perhaps it is fate. As my departure neared, I realized something profound. Something along the way, the idea of meeting her stopped feeling like a formality and started feeling like a choice I wanted to make. And for the first time, I asked myself, would she choose me? The third story I'm going to read is in the early days, about a month and a half that I've known her, and I've titled it Unspoken Words. I call it at this moment the language of attraction. It has been 5 weeks since I had first stepped into Shireen's home in Faizabad. This time I returned not as a guest, but as her husband. While it was natural for her to feel at peace in her familiar surrounding, I was surprised to find that her serenity extended to me as well. The hustle of New Delhi felt distant here. The rooms were larger, the ceilings higher, and the undeniable calmness filled the space. As I wandered through the living room, my eyes landed on a bookcase filled with a mix of books. On one side of the top shelf, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Chekhov stood. On the other side, Victor Hugo, Alexander Dumas, and Sartre. Curious, I turned to Sheen. How did such a diverse collection find its way here? She explained the books belonged to her mother, an avid reader, and most had been gifts. The mission to lepers, doctors, and missionaries from England or Australia often gave her their finished books. Once an Australian visitor even gifted his entire library. A familiar title caught my eye, The Good Earth by Pearl Spot. I told Shireen that I had read it 2 years ago and was struck by Buck's deep understanding of Chinese culture. Buck grew up in China as the daughter of missionary Shireen added. Always ready to enrich a conversation, she pulled out two more books by Buck, Mother and Son, explaining that she had read them as well. Our conversation drifted to reading habits. I admitted that in my large family, books were not a common pastime. Amused, she asked, were you more of a newspaper family? I nodded, recalling how my Aunt Philly subscribed to the Hindustan Times. My grandfather read it thoroughly, while I, as a teenager, spent my time cutting out pictures of cricketers, assembling an extensive collection of world class players. As the evening deepened, another difference between the homes became clear. In Delhi, we slept on charpoys with bamboo frames woven with natural fiber. But here, our beds were made of a wider cloth-like weave, nearly 1.5 times broader than what I was accustomed to. I usually retired to our bedroom around 9:30 p.m., while Shireen stayed up a bit longer, cherishing time with her mother. When she finally entered the room, her dog followed in and curled up beneath her bed. She followed you everywhere, I remarked. Her name is Kudri, Shireen said. Whenever I come home, she never leaves my side. As we settled in for the night, I shared the shift in my emotions. At first, being with you filled me with happiness, I confess. But now it's something deeper, as if I'm drowning in happiness with a feeling of attraction and pleasure. Shireen asked me to elaborate. I reflected. The first time I visited your home on July 12th, I felt happiness had lingered with me. During our time in Delhi, that happiness deepened into joy. Now those joyous feelings are transforming into something even more profound. The more I understand you, the more deeply I feel. She listened intently and asked, is there a Hindi word that describes what you're feeling? I hesitated. Sensing my uncertainty, she offered. In Hindi, we use dukha for suffering, sukha for happiness, and anand, bliss, to describe human states. Dukha and sukha are the two sides of the same coin, but anand is deeper, a sense of contentment. Her comment steered my mind toward philosophy. Buddhism teaches that suffering is tied to attachment and that peace comes from letting go. I shared my skepticism. Letting go of attachment might work in some cases, I said, but how does it help someone suffering due to natural disasters, extreme poverty, or atrocities like concentration camps? My thought raced, and I recalled the story of Kisa Gotami, the grieving mother in Buddhist teaching. I speculated that if Mahatma Gandhi had counseled her, he might have told her to adopt and care for another orphan child, offering the same love she would have given to her own child. But she, ever precise, pointed out that I had misquoted Gandhi. She reminded me that during the partition, when a man who had killed a Muslim child sought Gandhi's guidance, Gandhi told him to find a Muslim orphan and raise him as his own, while ensuring that the child remained true to his father's faith. I smiled at her sharp memory. Wasn't misquoting him. I was applying the ideas of Tisa Gotami story. I explained. In the Buddhist story, her healing comes from realizing that everyone experiences loss and that she must accept it and move on. But Gandhi's story suggests that healing comes from a purposeful action by doing something meaningful in response to suffering. She tilted her head thoughtfully. Can it be any purposeful action? I reached for a hand, gently folding into my own. I have to admit, I accidentally stumbled into Buddhist philosophy, I confess. It's not something I studied, but I find myself trying to make sense of it in my own way. What I do know is that my perspective on leadership shifted during my stay in US. When I left India in 1961, Nehru was my hero. After spending 5 years in US, I returned with Gandhi as my hero. Shireen's eyes softened and she smiled, a knowing expression dancing across her face. In the quiet of our home, as our dog lay peacefully below, I realized that contentment does not fully capture my feeling. What I felt was joy fortified by attraction. Outside, the world carried on, unchanged. But in that quiet room beneath the Faizabad sky full of stars, two souls found each other. One conversation, one shared thought at a time.
So very, very much for sharing these touching stories. You did beautifully.
Thank you. Giving me a chance to come and share. I appreciate it.
He was very reluctant.
Very powerful.
Absolutely. I still got goosebumps. And as an extra added attraction,
Yeah.
introduce.
Oh, my daughter Renuka is here with me.
Yeah, I'm Renuka. Nice meeting you. And my sister Ranju is on Zoom, so she's watching from Arizona.
Only thing I want to add is that when I first started writing, I was just writing whatever came to my mind, and I would send it to Renuka because she in the home, I assume, was the one who could find my English errors. And she used to write 3 words, I like it. And every time she would say, I like it, I would put it in one file. And once when the other one, if she would not respond, I put it in the other file. I have this collection of stories that she likes it. And 6 months ago, I started to edit them. And I didn't know how to do it. So I put it in Chat GPT and asked it if this story was written, or if an English professor was reading it, what would he do? And it gave me a series of things which were good and a lot of things which were wrong. And I didn't know how to correct any of the wrongs. But it kept telling me the character is not fully fleshed out and all that. So I kept combining stories. And nothing would, I couldn't satisfy Chat. I kept looking. Then it dawned on me that I used to be in Toastmasters Club and I used to always write these humor contests I would win. I thought I just had the style of being able to speak, but I looked at the stories and I realized that there is a style that I do to these stories. And so I attempted to re-alter them into the style that I used to write jokes for. So that's what is now coming into. So when you're listening to it, they change because I seem to have in my mind, I know what I want to do, and then kind of get balanced out.
It was perfect. I was glad that you